Using willpower in the correct way is not as intuitive as you may think at first glance. You can easily run the risk of using a repressive strength of your emotions and desires and to create an armor that entraps your soul. That's why we in Charisma School very clearly distinguish the different ways that you can use your willpower and developed a particular state which allows you to connect to your true self without generating repressions and blocked energy. The notion most people have of using willpower is simply resisting whatever they are trying to resist, either of eating or not doing or not thinking. It's always a resisting or negating something that you want or some desire. We call this the Victorian Will, since in the Victorian age, the virtue of willpower, self-restraint and self-control was a popular notion due to a whole range of historical and cultural factors, as well as some self-help books that were published around that time. In fact, a large majority of people built true psychic armors in themselves and their lives 24 hours a day in this restraint. As you might have guessed, this generated different layers of repression or a whole combination of psychosomatic problems. You don't need to think much as to why it happens. You just need to imagine that each time that you have a desire, an emotion, or a thought that you don't want to have, you say to yourself, I don't want it, in a strong way. In a short time, you'll create a whole deposit of repressed energy, of desires and emotions that must be released in some way. It's like this energy is pushed down deeper and deeper until a time where it absolutely needs to come out. And this is where the problems begin, since the way this energy would choose to come out will not be the best for you. If you think the way many people do the traditional diets, it's the same principle. Pick a restrictive diet, keep avoiding all the sweets and foods that you love until one day you cannot resist anymore and you binge eat for the whole day. In a short while, you'll forget about the diet. This is a normal result when you use the Victorian Will. In the Victorian age, this self-control armor was so strong in many people that Freud and his followers around the same age had some problems in breaking it so that they could help these individuals who were suffering underneath the armor due to the repressed emotions and desires. So the armor was actually harming them. The interesting is, once these armored individuals could get the insights from psychoanalytic therapy, they could easily change and solve their problems, since their own self-restraint and willpower then became an aid in the change and healing process. A few decades gone by, and researchers who followed Freud's therapy noticed that it had decreased in efficiency. It was no longer that easy to change themselves. As the Victorian willpower decreased, individuals no longer had the same kind of power to modify their own behavior, making the treatment less efficient. So this Victorian willpower was the problem and the cure at the same time. It was very restrictive and built depths of repression and a strong armor in people, but it also had its positive sides. Our will is an extraordinary strength, which, with a good guidance, can be a strong source of power to help us in our path. What we need to do is to know how to direct this strength without building this strong armor and this pit of repression. This is what we do in Charisma School with the will state or the act of will. The goal is to understand what is the internal state that allows us to connect with our source of will and inner power in a way where you won't create this armor and generate energy repression with its obvious downsides. This way, it's possible to use this power in a healthy way that empowers us without side effects. That's what the will state is all about. The will state is a complete unification of your mind and body to your will. What you intend to do, your body, mind and emotions, follow without question and without repression. It unifies your whole body, mind and energy under the control of a central command. There's no anxiety, no nervousness, no repression, just an act of will. As you can imagine, it's a very useful state for all kinds of situations in our daily life. How would your life be different if what you wanted to do really did it with no interferences from your mind and body? How would you feel if your mind and body were in your full control? Control over pain, control over procrastination, control over anxiety. How would you feel if all the influence techniques that you learned before now work 100 times better due to a superior mental supremacy? Your mind, body and energy surrender to your will. They simply know that resistance is futile, so you just give up trying to come up with excuses, anxiety or fear. Keep in mind that This is not a logical or a rational conclusion of your mind. On many situations, we know that we are going to do something, yet we are still nervous or anxious. We know that we have to give that speech or that presentation. After all, our job depends on it, yet we are still nervous. Why? This happens because there isn't an alignment of our whole mind, energy, and intention with the will. Our rational mind knows that it's going to do something, but our subconscious is still trying to avoid it or control it somehow. This means our mind is still trying to control the outcome of what it wants to happen instead of surrendering to the true power of the will. Hence, it generates this anxiety, nervousness, or fear. If you try to overpower it, you will repress these strong emotions, causing it even further harm and a possible panic attack in the near future. With the act of will, you aren't overpowering anything, you are unifying. The feeling of the will state is completely different than the Victorian will. The Victorian will is a very muscular type of feeling. You resist, you tense, you endure. While the will state is a much more energetic type of feeling. You absorb, you transform, you accept and redirect this strength. When you have entered this state, then you make a decision and no matter what, nervousness or resistance suddenly disappears. Even if you are walking to face certain death. This is easily seen on the Japanese samurai ritual of suicide, because they used to do it to die with honor, where they disembowel themselves. Historical texts have mentioned their calmness and steady mind at the moment or at the time that they are disemboweling themselves. In the moment they decide they are going to do this, we wouldn't see any fear in them. We'd only see an act of pure will. Yet, I'm sure that we can all agree that this will be one very good reason to be fearful about. Much worse than public speaking or approaching a woman. You simply know in the depth of your being that you are going to do this. There's no turning back, so everything becomes aligned. Your mind knows this and knows that all resistance is futile. So it just gives up in trying to come up with excuses like anxiety or fear. Your mind surrenders to your will in the will state. The will state tends to be this temporarily boost of power and union, but there's also a permanent act of will. This is when you take a decision in a way that affects the very core of your being. We've all heard or met individuals who stop negative habits or start positive ones from one day to the next with very little effort and side effects. Most likely, you also had an uncle or a friend who woke up one day and just decided to quit his 20-year smoking habit and haven't smoked since with minimum cravings. Or someone who decided to be a vegetarian from one day to the next and hadn't had meat since 1995. Now, how can someone quit smoking cold turkey or easily transform his diet without feeling cravings or emotional upheavals that most people have? What's the difference between those who quit smoking cold turkey with no cravings and those, or minimal cravings, and those who go back and forth and never seem to quit even though that they tried 100 different methods? It's surely not the traditional Victorian notion of willpower, since one person barely has any cravings while the other lives with cravings every day that he doesn't smoke. So you would in fact need to apply much more of the traditional Victorian willpower and would have much more repression. The difference is in the will state, or in this case, an act of will that permanently changes your own energy. A permanent act of will in that particular decision if you must. It's a decision that you consciously take that changes a crucial and essential part of you, while the other person who tries the 100 different methods unsuccessfully never actually made that decision, at least on this profound energetic level. Maybe they made the decision on only a superficial level, but they never truly wanted it. This is not related to what they say to themselves. The inner voice is probably the exact same on both cases, but the overall feeling, attitude, and energy is completely different, and this makes all the difference in the world. In the first case, the decision is 100% accepted. You are surrendering to your decision, while in the other case, you are still resisting the decision. It's the same in personal magnetism and sexual energy, for example. As long as you keep resisting your decision to be magnetic or sexual, you can try 100 different methods and you'll always fail. Once you accept your decision and fully embrace the new energy, the new behaviors, and the new thoughts, then you'll truly change. The permanent act of will is more of a deep core change in yourself. Not so easy to do and accomplish than the will state, but a very powerful change agent. In the past text of magnetism and energy training, they often speak about this type of superior mental supremacy and superior states of mind in connection to your will as crucial states to be in to move energy and achieve influence. But they don't explain practical and working techniques to get there. So it all remains on a vague type of description. Yet, it's the key to unlock many great powers inside of you. So we develop a much easier technique for you to understand and develop this superior mental state. And it won't take you decades of training like the old samurais either. We consider this technique so important that we made it available as a bonus-free course to all Charisma School students who have bought one of our longer trainings. But it's particularly important to do in combination with the 10 steps to inner power. Both of these trainings combined are crucial in the development of your own magnetism and will.